So I'll just give a little quick introduction for those that don't know us. My name's Noah. I'm the president of Healthy Hawks.
And my name is Evan. I am the VP of Marketing.
Oh, nice.
And we have also...
I'm Kim Dawson. I'm a professor in sport and exercise psychology in the kinesiology department at Wilfrid Laurier University. And then I also have my own consulting company called Mind to Achieve, where I work with people who are trying to engage in life and use physical activity to meet their best potential.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So basically, for those that don't know what Healthy Hawks is about, we promote the 5 aspects of health on a connected level for students. So that's physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, and social health. And, we really want to relate to students. And we feel that, the profs that you see every day, the ones that teach you, can really provide a good input as to giving some strategies and some coping mechanisms that you can use. So we do have the first question here, which is emotional health is defined as the emotional quality in an individual's experiences. It's the well-being that is influenced by a variety of demographics, psychographics, economic, and situational factors. Emotional health involves one's ability to manage and express emotions that arise from experiences, and this is not to be confused with mental health, which is how one relates or processes these kinds of experiences. So my question for you is, how do you think one's emotional health relates to your field of research?
So my field of research is getting people to exercise more regularly, right? So it's completely tied. So mood and exercise are one of the strongest positive correlations that we know, right? So we know that if we are feeling somewhat anxious or depressed, that if we go out and we do some sort of physical activity, we can move that into a very productive way. So, and emotion is really interesting with exercise all the way through, is that we get a better mood while we're exercising, and then that follows through much longer, and you have that nice refractory period where you're actually feeling better afterwards. So, why does that happen? And there's lots of theories about why would exercise improve our mood. And some of it's from a chemical standpoint, from the endorphin or the neurotransmitters, and some of it's from a psychological standpoint where we feel good if we master something and we're competent and we're capable. Some of it's from the fact that it's a social connection. Like, we're not meant to be isolated individuals. So exercise is largely done in groups activities. So all of those different things will contribute to the relationship between our emotions or our mood in any given time, or the stability over time. So we do know that exercisers that have regular exercise patterns tend to be able to self-regulate their moods better, and they tend to be able to have a healthier and a higher homeostatic normal point. It's not to say that if you exercise regularly, you're not going to have the blues or have some of those sorts of things, but you're able to utilize exercise and your other sources of support to get yourself back up on that point again.
Mm-hmm. And just to add on that, it's kind of funny that it's a trade-off that, especially when you start in the gym, your body is telling you to stop. It's not used to it. You physically hurt, and your brain
That's
is
right.
like, stop this. But over time, I think people develop and kind of understand to embrace that pain. And that is something that over the long run really turns your emotions like in a positive direction.
Mm-hmm.
So although it's tough in the beginning, you really grow at the end of the day.
And then also, and that's the whole point of resiliency, right? So we want to challenge ourselves emotionally. We want to have some challenge that's within our capabilities. And it's the same thing with exercise. So a brand new exerciser, I would never prescribe something of high intensity or duration or frequency. So we always want to make sure we have the prescription at the beginning. So it is challenging you a little bit. And what you're saying is absolutely true, is that nobody likes exercise at the beginning, but it is a love relationship that acquires over time. And you start to have to really be acutely aware of how your body is changing and how your mind is changing. And, the interesting thing though, Noah, is that I used to be much more, we'll find something you like to do and do it. But as research has shown, it's much more prescriptive. It's not something, even if you just don't listen to your feelings, even if you don't feel like doing it, they're very false friends. It's not, we used to think of not exercising as a neutral health behavior, but it's not. It's a negative health behavior. And we have to think of it as the same thing as smoking or engaging in unhealthy, any behavior, right? So I'm really pushing people now to really, regardless of how you feel, you got to get out and do it. And then the reward of that is that nice feelings afterwards.
It's kind of almost like setting a standard for yourself, like how you make coffee in the morning or you make your tea in the morning. If you can incorporate going to the gym or just being physically active, it becomes a part of your standard and your routine. And
Absolutely.
after some time, it's like you don't even think about it. It's just something that you do.
Well,
So
that's
yeah,
the stages of change. If we can get people to that habitual point, right? And there are some people in the world that will walk to the gym the same way they put a seatbelt on when they sit into a car. It's that habitual for them. So that's the end point that we want to get to, but it's not always easy with all individuals.
of course.
And so with it not always easy, I would love to hear say someone wanted to really get into maybe a habit of going out and exercising during these trying times. What are some
Right.
suggestions for, let's say, a beginner who is kind of like, oh, not really the exercising type, but still wants to get the benefits of exercise?
Okay, so one of the things I say is really figure out what else you need in your world, right? So I call it behavior economics, which means if you can find one activity to do multiple things, there's a higher probability you're going to stick with it. So for that new exerciser, I would also say to them, are you craving social interaction? What is it that you do? So walking with a friend. Right? So right now we know actually that it's not going to be the big run that's going to save us. It's going to be the activities that are embedded in our daily lives, like how much movement, and this is why this Zoom stuff is just killing us right now as students in university setting, because going for that 1 hour intense workout is not where the health benefits come from. It was our daily walking to class, going up the stairs, moving about. So that's what I'm trying to impress upon people right now is that I just want you to choose to move, right? I want you, simple things, like if you're used to just using your remote all the time, get up and change the channels, walk away from your technology, give yourself some time out to actually move about your house. And for new individuals, that's the message they need to hear is that it doesn't have to be intense. It doesn't have to be hard. It just has to be, you can even decide to do a stretching program. Every commercial that you're watching, you could do something differently in your room. So just really small changes are the best changes and the ones that people have the highest probability of sticking with.
Yeah, it's something that a tip that we gave at Healthy Ox is to do something you're passionate about too. So let's say you played basketball as a kid, you liked playing basketball, you can go outside and play basketball when the weather's nice. Or, if you swam, that's something that I did personally. During the pandemic, I stopped exercising regularly, and then I found my way back through swimming because I swam when I was little and I found that enjoyable. So if you find it enjoyable, something that you've done, for a large portion or even a small portion of your life, it's easy to get into that routine.
But I think that comes from a place, Noah, of it was enjoyable for you, right? So I'm trying to get people just to understand that really we have to engage in it, just like it's a choice, right? It's a choice to have a routine. It's a choice to have a plan to get out there. So the best thing for people your age is just to do it with somebody else, right? The social connection of it is so big. So you're right. Like instead of going someplace to sit and be stationary and play cards, why not get up and go play Frisbee out in the park, right? So if we can make that our new norm, that when we engage with people, that's what we do, then we have a higher probability of it being successful.
Yeah, so those are a little bit of tips, but some people, they overlook it or they're not passionate about it. So what are some signs that you could look for, if someone is not being as active as they should be, but they're not recognizing that?
Well, it's interesting because we're talking a lot about emotional well-being right now, and we're talking about what does that mean? And what emotional well-being means that you're able to make attachments to individuals, right? And so you're able to live your life with health and vitality. It's not just the absence of disease, right? So we don't want to confuse that with mental health. So we don't want to say, well, I'm mentally healthy because I'm not dealing with depression and I'm not dealing with anxiety right now. It's more than that. Emotional well-being is when you see people that choose to engage. So for example, you two, being part of the Healthy Hawks, saying that I'm going to be part of an organization, engage in it and do something different. So what we're looking for then in return for individuals that are not emotionally well, you see a lot of depersonalization where they don't feel involved in terms of things that are going on. You feel unengaged. You feel almost like you're stale or you're burnt out, and learned helpless, which is this feeling of it doesn't matter what I do because I don't have any control over my consequences. So if you hear individuals talking about that, then we know that we have to intervene. And so again, exercise becomes one of those places to get that mastery experience back. But what personal trainers make a problem of, or they sometimes make the mistake of, is they prescribe something too much, too soon, too fast. And that's where we start to deter people. So with my classes at the end of the day on a Friday, all I'll simply say to them is choose to move. Choose to move in one way today that you might not have chosen yesterday. right? And if we just do that, choose to move, when you have an option, if you take the stairs instead of the elevator, park a little bit farther away, bike, walk, go get your groceries that way. Those are all things that will start embedding more movement into your day. And that's where we start to see, hey, you start to see this emotional lift then, because you are outside. And that's a big part about physical activity, is the outdoor component of it. And there's a difference between going to the gym and going outside. So talking to people, making them aware of, like, how did you feel after you went and you had that walk with your buddy, right? And it doesn't matter if it was the buddy, it doesn't matter if it was walk, or it doesn't matter if it was the outdoor, or all three of them. Something changed that emotional response.
Amazing. So our kind of second question-ish, if you so 2020 has been extremely crazy for everyone.
Yeah.
Pandemic, COVID, it's just been crazy, essentially. So I was just wondering some of the implications on emotional health that social isolation and like this constant fear of crisis does to someone.
Well, it's interesting, because one of the things that I'm very frustrated right now is the paradox for your generation. Okay, so for your generation, the things that are problematic are mental health issues or this emotional well-being, anxiety, depression. Your risk of actually being seriously injured by COVID is far less than your risk of actually having an issue because of mental health issue. So what did we do? We sequestered you. We took you away from COVID. We put us all remote, and then we put you in this box and said, now be mentally well, right? So that is something that I'm very frustrated about. From a public health perspective, developmentally, we really didn't pay attention to what your cohort needed, right? And we should have found ways to be able to do that. So the research that's coming out of the Canadian Mental Health Association is not good in terms of the number of individuals that have considered doing, depressive types of things or considered suicide. I think it was 35% in the last poll. So that's staggering, right? That's staggering. So I'm really pushing your generation and your cohort to understand that you need social interaction. You need to move your body. That is embedded in that developmental stage that you are at. So fight against this technology. And, my son's in first year university right now. And I watch him go from his class to his group meeting to his studying. And then even if he wants to have a little bit of fun, which he should be able to have, he does some gaming or he does some Netflix, right? So at the end of the day, then that's just a lot of sedentary, isolated behavior. So really, again, finding ways to creatively connect with individuals and get out there and move. And I said, like, just walk. That's all I'm asking people to do. Walk and engage with nature. And that's all we can do at this point, but to push through it, because I am concerned, quite honestly. That's a great question, Evan. I just do think that the effects of this are going to be long-term if we don't continue to just try to move our way back to life now. And because this vaccine is coming out, let's start transitioning. Let's start getting some better behaviors. If we were being a couch potato, what's just one thing that you can do tomorrow that starts walking towards that light?
Amazing.
Well, physical and emotional health, they kind of have like an intimate relationship. So if you work out more, you'll be emotionally more stable. You'll be happier. You'll push that extra rep in the gym. If you're happier, it also translates towards wanting to go outside or wanting to be physically active. So it's important to keep that balance in mind. It's not to say that one can be isolated on its own, because at the end of the day, it's kind of like a circle that goes around. So you're better in the gym, you're more active, you feel emotionally better, and vice versa. I think we have one more question here, Evan, if you want to take that one, the last one there.
Okay, so we're going to talk. People tend to look past emotional health and usually focus on physical health. Even though all aspects of health are interconnected, emotional health can tend to be pushed aside. So knowing that, why do you think it is so important to take care of your own emotional health? This is kind of a broad question. This is obviously how you feel, but just to give kind of insight from someone that knows what they're talking about.
Well, it's a good question, right? Because what we're really aspiring to is a quality of life, right? And what is quality of life? It's not the number of years that you quantifiably are on this earth. It's the quality and the integrity upon which you live your life for the years that you have, right? So really that's what we're looking for. And when you look at what that's based on, well, that's based on your physical health, that's based on your spiritual health, your sexual health, your emotional health. All of those things are equally important. And at different stages of your life, they come into different play, right? So here's the thing is that if we're not emotionally well, then everything else it falls apart, because it's everything that we need. We need to be emotionally well to be able to live our life with vigor and physically do the things that we need to do. We need to be emotionally well to maintain our health, to make sure that you do all the preventative things that you need to do. If you're emotionally open and accessible, you can have, social relationships with others, and you can also engage in some spiritual inquisition, right? So it is the base bone upon everything that we need to do. So one of the real catchphrases in this COVID time has been self-care. And whatever you want to call it, I will say that human beings aren't over-engaged or overtraining. We're under-recovered. So what does that recovery look like for you? And that's where your emotional health will come from. That's where you'll feel you're well again. That's where you'll get away from staleness and burnout. So I'm just trying to encourage people, if every day you're on Zoom, if every day you're on technology, then your other away has to be away from that. Right? So again, you have to unplug so that you can grow, and then you can become emotionally stable again, and you can get back to that point that you need to be, because otherwise we're just going to keep pushing and pushing over in the same direction without any of that regrowth that we need.
And I guess my last question here is, do you have any books or something that you recommend people start with, kind of like a motivation to get going in changing their lives?
I really honestly don't. I always think that the best source of information is your peers, right? Like, honestly, that is such a strong bind in terms of the two of which you can do. And think about sort of what we've lost. Your roommates that were your really good social support. They were your reassurance of worth. They were everything. So I would say have a conversation with someone. Always look at someone who's very similar to you, that has a lifestyle that they like to do, and that one that you would like to emulate. And ask them the question about, were you always like this? How did you begin? What was the first step that you took? What would you suggest to me so that I can start moving that way? Because I find that books are really generic, right? So what good is a suggestion for you guys if they're geared towards people with families? So really ask that individual. And I think that as role models like the two of you are, it's your responsibility as well to see other people that need that behavior and ask them to come along. Not in a judgmental type of way, but just as hey, let's give it a try, a supportive sort of way. That's what people call me, the exercise bully, right? Because that's what my expectation is. We're going to move. That's what we're going to do together. And, but I'm happy about that, because there's lots of people that have begun a journey with exercise that they wouldn't necessarily have. So
that's funny. It's funny that you say that, because my friend group, especially at home, it only took one person to start becoming very motivated about their fitness, that it changed our whole friend group. Like after a year or so, everybody was in the gym, everybody was working out. And then when I came to school, I like did that to my roommates. I motivated them to start being physically active. So really all it takes is one person, and that person can always be you. That person can always, it just starts with a decision in your mind to become physically fit, and that's all it takes.
Yeah, so, and just get the ball rolling.
Yeah. So I think we can wrap it up there. Okay. It was great to have you on. We really
it was great to talk to you guys. Yeah, no worries.
You guys can find this on our social media, and we're also having an event on emotional health today at 8 p.m. So I hope to see you guys there, and have a good one. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Amazing. Yay.
Awesome.